Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the findings of the research commissioned by the Welfare Reform Committee, which suggests that parents and disabled people are being hit hardest by the UK Government's welfare reforms.
Minister Margaret Burgess.
This report highlights the scale of the damage inflicted by the UK Government's cuts and changes and adds to the growing evidence base around the negative impacts of welfare reform on Scottish households. Those changes are placing parents and disabled people under intolerable strain as they struggle to cope with the changes being introduced. The Scottish Government is doing all that it can to help those affected, and we are investing around £296 million across 2013-14 to 2015-16 to limit the damage of the reforms. While we can't fully mitigate all the effects of welfare changes within the powers and resources we have, we will continue to make the argument for a fairer welfare system.
Clare Adamson.
Thank the Minister for her answer. The report does give further evidence that some of the most vulnerable members of society are losing out. And all of this before we include the impact of harsher sanctions regimes, which we already know is increasing the impact on the incomes of lone parents and disabled people. Does the Minister agree with me that given the scale of income lost through the benefit cuts, the UK Government must urgently investigate claims of DWP's imposed pressure on staff to apply benefit sanctions that are quite clearly impacting on the incomes of the most vulnerable in Scotland?
Minister.
I certainly would agree with the member. I think we're in a situation where we have a government in the UK that is so far removed from the reality of what's going on within communities throughout the country. We have a government who will not accept the evidence that's been put in front of them regarding sanctions and food banks. We've got organisation after organisation lining up to produce the evidence for the government, for the UK government, who refuses absolutely to accept it. We've even seen the churches intervening to say that some of the sanction regime in particular and the targets set for it are inhumane, yet the UK government still ploughs on. I would want to say that this government is totally opposed to that and accepts that austerity does not reduce inequality.
Ms Adamson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Minister may be aware of a recent article in The Scotsman, Poverty is a Child Protection Issue, written by Harry Stevenson, who is President of the Social Work Scotland, in which he poses the questions: can you imagine the despair of parents who are fully aware of being unable to meet the basic needs of their children? Can you imagine the impact of the indignity of living in long-term poverty? And most importantly, can you imagine the impact of children's confidence and self-worth? Giving these comments, in addition to the growing evidence about welfare reform policies, what message is the Cabinet Secretary send to those UK parties who voted for continued austerity in the UK budget?
Cabinet Minister.
I could say very clearly, I would say to him to think again. But clearly, that's why the First Minister, our First Minister, argued last month we need to bring an end to the austerity agenda of the Tories and Labour, and instead increase public investment by £180 billion compared to the Tory plans in the UK over the next 4 years. It's only by ending austerity that we'll be able to bring an end to the need for food banks, an end to the suffering that people are having through the benefit sanctions. This government wants to see the economy grow and reduce inequalities, and to do that we have to end austerity.